Well, good morning and welcome to the Church Office podcast. If you're joining us on video, then here's a little wave and thanks for joining us. We've got Penny here today, which is fantastic. She's part of the Bolton King's Church. You're the business manager there, is that right? Operations director. People will know you for...
You can't settle on a title. It's tea lady today.
It changes, doesn't it? And you're involved in loads of other things. You're involved in UCAN, which we love. And you're also doing some lecturing with Manchester University, aren't you? All over the world, you know.
Yeah,
famous
no, I don't know about famous.
Lecturer.
Always liked teaching, always loved teaching. I think that's just sort of in my nature, but ended up at Manchester University and then left to go and work at church. And then they asked me would I go back and do some teaching for them. And it just happened to be in Shanghai the first time, and then Hong Kong, and then Dubai. Amazing. And I've been to America, and last week I was in Dubai, but actually sadly only on Zoom.
Yeah,
so can't wait to get flying again.
A cheeky trip out there would be great, wouldn't it?
Yes, need a bit of sunshine.
That would be good. And I've invited Penny on today because I attended a roundtable workshop with UCAN probably a week ago, wasn't it? And Penny was talking about managing volunteers and caring for volunteers, and I rang her up and said, brilliant job, learned so much. We should get on the podcast together and just kind of talk about it and talk about what we found in our groups, and this whole area about managing volunteers is a big topic at the minute, I think, for church administrators and churches, as we've come back from being out and furloughed, if you like, with all the COVID restrictions. People are reassessing what they're doing. Some are coming back to church, some are not, and volunteer levels are pretty dire, I think, in some churches.
Yeah, I was going to say it's probably not even so much about managing volunteers. It's more about the recruitment of volunteers and the re-engagement of volunteers. I absolutely agree that whole sort of coming back and reassessing, we all should reassess, priorities. Should we throw ourselves back into doing 25 different ministries just because it's something we've always done? Or should we really be asking ourselves, what's God wanting me to do? But as part of the family, it is part of our Christian service, isn't it?
Yeah. And as part of the talk, Penny, there was a poll, wasn't there? And there were about 50 churches represented who did the poll. And there was some interesting findings, really, wasn't there, on that?
Yeah, I'm a bit of a technophobe, so I actually took screenshots of the poll. So what I could see was the first question we had was sort of what kind of levels are you finding your volunteers are back at? I'm not sure that's the question. I don't think I've articulated that well, but what percentage of volunteers are back? And I think we were pretty much the median was somewhere between 50 and 70%, which I guess is probably 60. So that's only just over half. In some churches pushing 70%, but that's nowhere near like the previous levels, is it?
No, not at all, isn't it? No. And Jules on a previous podcast talked to us about this kind of great resignation where people are just resigning or not coming back to specific roles that they might have served in before. And the church is gonna over the next few months is gonna have to work through some of these things, aren't they, of how to recruit in the midst of even still now some of the COVID restrictions or kids being off and not being able to attend, last minute changes. There's all of these things that church administrators and ops directors, we're going to have to deal with this more and more in the next few months, really, in the run up to Christmas.
Well, I think it's also probably for a different conversation, maybe not for today, but some people who were our key volunteers, if you like, have maybe chosen not to come back to church because they found alternatives, or they preferred online church because it just fitted, or they could even do catch-up church. Yeah. So I think there's a bigger element there, probably, as I say, not for this discussion, but just how do we re-engage people with church?
Yeah. No, that's helpful. Penny, what was the second poll that you did?
Second question, it was again answered by more than 50 churches, but which areas of serving, where are you struggling most with volunteer capacity? And I don't think there was any surprise in the answers to these. So it was literally a one single vote. 45% of people said kids and youth. That's a perennial shortage, isn't it? Sunday hospitality. To me, Sunday hospitality is the sort of coffee shop, but I guess it's probably hosting and serving, and they're getting people to their seats and the welcome teams, etc. And then 20% again was Sunday tech and AV.
Yeah.
Gosh, that's quite a skill, isn't it, to do that? That's not. I couldn't go and do that on a Sunday.
Yeah, it is a skill, isn't it? And I feel for our tech guys who have kind of been thrusted into, taking everything online, all the different ministries wanted to meet online and do Zoom and all these other live streaming events and stuff like that we've been doing. I guess they're tired as well, aren't they?
Yeah, just no let up, but we need to pray for them, don't we?
We do, and we need some strategies, don't we, for people like the tech team? How do we broaden out those teams? How do we train more people to play more parts, I guess, in this process? We've realized that we can be reliant upon one or two people that, as we've gone forward, if they're not available or they're taking a holiday, actually it can put us in a little bit of a crisis, because we still want to be doing the live stream. We've still decided to continue to do that because it does serve those who are more vulnerable and not able to attend church at the minute. So yeah, we need to kind of re-strategize, don't we? And this whole area of kind of recruitment and managing the volunteers we've got.
I was talking to one of our leadership team the other day whose history is in a small church, and he said people just got on and did things. If the grass needed cutting, nobody asked them, they just went and did it. But I think when you've got more technical things required now, that's pretty old school, people just doing it. There's a whole series of writings about the demographics of volunteers, and those sort of 60, 70 plus age group, they will serve because that's what they did. They will just jump on, whereas other people have other choices and they have expectations. If I'm going to volunteer, I want to get something out of it. Now, I would challenge that, but I think that the strategizing about volunteers is probably quite an unusual thing for churches to talk about, but I really think we need to. People need to feel the sense of why they're doing it, how they're going to grow in this. Is somebody investing in me such that I get some training? You never normally think about training a volunteer in church, do you? But
no, that's
I think we do need to now.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely spot on. And during the talk afterwards, we broke down into smaller groups of sort of 15 sort of churches or folks that were serving those churches. And there were some really interesting discussions from the groups that came. And I think one of the points that you made that we spent quite a bit of time in our group is this need to come together from pastoral ministry and ministry work and administration to come together as one. And often, if the recruitment of volunteers falls just on the administrative side, it's gonna be hard, really hard work for those that are serving in those areas. But it needs both, doesn't it, to be effective? What's your experience of that, Penny?
I think historically and traditionally, it's been left to somebody to coordinate teams and expectation. But I genuinely believe that serving, and I don't sort of really like to call it volunteering, just because that kind of gives you the inference that it's optional. I don't believe this is optional. That, I think I said last week, if I'm inviting someone into my home, I expect I should serve them. So kind of goes back to, are we really wanting to bring people into the house of God as our home and for them to join us as family? Because you wouldn't dream of inviting someone into your home at home and then telling them to sort themselves out. You would serve, you would wait on, you would make them feel welcome. So that's where it's so much more than just filling a rota or just putting someone onto a team. It's a much deeper spiritual issue and heart matter that, if we're engaging people, but I'm not saying it's not our job to engage people, but that's where the ministry side of things has to work with the operational side, because this is a heart issue. This is a spiritual issue of being part of a family and what God's created us to do. And is our real heart to bring people in to meet Jesus? And that's where an operations person probably doesn't have a responsibility of what's being preached from the pulpit. And that's the difficulty, isn't it? It's how do you, and I know you work with your senior leadership team quite closely, I do too, in terms of, I don't have a responsibility or huge input into what's being preached, but it is a conversation that we're having, which has to be about the two parts need to come to work together and not work separately on this.
Yeah, absolutely right. And we've just been encouraging our guys. So, where there's a recruitment drive on a Sunday and a notice is, it might get left to me. And I've said, actually, for the food bank manager, why don't you get up and do the recruitment drive yourself? Because A, the project, and B, you're going to connect that ministry to the gospel, to people in a way that I can't, because I don't know about it fully. That will motivate people to go, actually, there's a gospel connection here. So I might just be packing food, but the link to actually reaching people for Jesus is there. And we want people to see that actually it's not just about tea and coffee, but you're right, the whole hospitality, the whole feeling that someone comes into a building with, and they get that sense of family, they see other people who are being loved and cared for. It causes people to ask questions, doesn't it? And that's part of what we do, isn't it?
Yeah, and as those who lead the volunteer team, the team on a Sunday, we call it our Making It Happen team, that inspiring them as to why they're doing what they're doing, are bringing stories of who they met the week before, what's happened since then.
Yeah.
It's so powerful because it's not just pointing someone to a car park space, it's being the face that somebody sees as they come through the gates for their first time, maybe a little bit nervous about coming into the church premises, or they've had a bad morning, or they're having a really hard time at home and they just need to come to church.
Yeah.
You're the first person they see. It's so important. So it's that connection with, this isn't just about the sermon is the God bit. The whole experience is meeting Jesus, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
And I know we're only talking about Sunday church here, but that's our kind of outward expression in a lot of instances, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah. I think one of the things that I've been chewing over, Penny, as well, is this idea that my initial focus can be, right, how's God equipped you and gifted you, and how can we deploy you into a specific role? But we also have to hold that with, actually, the church needs somebody in this role. So a litter picking before the church service, there's nobody who's specifically gifted in that area, but it just needs somebody to go, right, I'm going to own this. I'm going to serve by making sure the car park's clear of all the rubbish from the previous night and whatever else. And so the focus on serving is so important, isn't it? And I think we, want to encourage volunteers. Yeah, we want to find that place where you can fit and your gifting works, but also there's a need here, and we've got to meet the needs first before we can do all these other developmental things.
Yeah, I think there's been so much focus, hasn't there, over the years of the spiritual people are preaching, and those who can't just get put on a team. Well, actually, no, I look at, we've talked before about Jesus being the greatest role model of serving.
Yeah.
His if you were just to look at it, I mean, it's so much more complex than this, but he was here to preach and bring the good news.
Yeah.
But he still washed his disciples' feet.
Yeah.
Now, that was a need to be done because they were probably dusty from the road, but it was also a much greater teaching point on that. Yeah. It was about being prepared to do what the lowest of the low would do.
Yeah.
And then, he said he used it as an example of, you can't be part of what I'm doing unless you do this.
Yeah.
Unless you let me wash your feet, and now you need to go and wash other people's feet. So that wasn't only the people who can't preach should wash the feet, or do the litter picking, if we're going to give it a parallel. It's for all of us, isn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely right. So I came across an interesting article that was talking about informing and inspiring, and those 2 points, which is which we're kind of talking about here a bit, if we, the kind of inspiring work that needs to happen with the pastoral team ministry and the administration. What are you doing in your church to better inform people? That we can talk about inspire, but what are you doing differently to kind of inform opportunities and where you need folk to serve?
This is actually a tricky one, and this has always been a challenge, because we're a big church and there's so much news, and every team wants to get on the stage on Sunday and do an announcement that we need people on our team. The kids team always, please come and serve on the kids team, which is a hugely important ministry. I'm not dismissing that as a hugely important ministry at all. But actually, what we've decided to do is we have a Facebook page where we just put out volunteer posts, opportunities. So anybody, and of course that doesn't catch everybody, but it catches some people.
Yes.
We have actually appointed someone as a volunteer coordinator.
Fantastic.
We have a space on our website which is not fully developed yet, but it has the opportunity to say, I'm interested in volunteering or serving on team, and then they can go to sort of look down a drop down box of where areas they could serve, or just say, well, I'm willing to serve, put me somewhere. And we take them through a process of, this is what we expect from volunteers, and then we get in touch with Tracy, my volunteer coordinator. She gets in touch with the relevant team leader, just to see it, because there will always be space for people to serve. Yes. But it's then sort of making sure they understand the expectations. This is the informing. it's a volunteer handbook. We actually have a volunteer handbook which goes through our code of practice, our King's Church values. But I think what we are moving to, and hopefully will be in place before Christmas, is more almost like a job advert section.
Yeah.
Because I think that's really important that people know where the needs are, because actually somebody might want a weekend cleaning job, or they might want to come and do such and such thing for as a volunteer, or they might want to come and stuff envelopes in the office. Does anyone even send anything by mail shot anymore? But you know what I mean, in the office during the week. So people have different. And the other thing is, we've had some highly skilled people say, I just want to come and do something that's a little less challenging in my week. Can I just come and be and make some tea and show some visitors around? Or, you know, I think it's just that being open to where, there are some jobs need doing, but where do you want to serve as well?
Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah, which is great. And I think alongside all of this is, you know, I've certainly spent more time in the last couple of months as I've been thinking about recruitment, just praying more and asking God to help us. Asking God to put on people's heart that love for the church, and that love for Christ, which is where, you know, all of this flows from, isn't it? You know, it's not just, you know, I have to play my part, so I'm going to tick a box, I'm going to do this, that's what I do. But actually, there's a real heart to get behind the church and serve the church, and I love that in our church. Our church are brilliant. You know, we're probably in the high 70s, 80s of people who've come back to church and the volunteering, and that's wonderful, and grateful to God for the difference that makes. But it's the kids ministry, isn't it, that's the hardest part of it. Now, one of the things that we've gone back and forth of, it'd be interesting to see your opinion on this, because we've sort of made it a rule, if you like, and we talk about this whole area of how to kind of manage volunteers, that if you've got a parent in the kids ministry, then we want you to have at least one of the parents serving in it. So there's a stock of people who can do it. And then we're going to do the hard work to find the people who have really got the gifting and the passion and the heart. And that seems to have made a difference in terms of numbers. But I also wondering whether it's because it's kind of a bit of a rule and you have to do it, whether you lose a bit of heart in it. And what have you guys done practically to help in kids ministry? Have you done something similar? Have you done something different? It's a hard area, isn't it? So the real practical things here for that particular area.
It is really hard. I think personally, it should be a strong encouragement. Okay. So I think my serving through the years started as a sort of early 20s doing youth work, because that was a good place to be. I was young and trendy then, no longer. But then as I progressed through, when I had children, I did I never thought twice about not serving in the creche.
Yeah.
So it was a heart issue, but I actually think I am so grateful to my parents for instilling that into me.
Yes.
If you expect from somebody, you know, why would I not go on the creche rota one in 4?
Yeah.
Because I was expecting my kids to be in there. Yeah. You know, and then as they went into Sunday school, as it was then, I did my stints in there. When it got to youth, they said, please, Mum, don't come. So I could go back to doing something else then.
On a Friday night, yeah.
Yeah, they really didn't want me there on a Friday night. I did it twice, and no, Mum, don't. You embarrass me. But I don't think we've ever had it as a rule, and I think it's a really good idea. But as a strong encouragement, I think with the whole serving on team, we have to walk a fine line. And actually, my expectation of myself is that I would do that.
Yeah.
But I spent some time last Sunday morning with effectively a single mum who had her 3 children. Well, why would I? Actually, my pastoral heart says you need to be in that service.
Yeah, you do.
Let me serve your children.
Yeah, absolutely right.
You know, so I think the hard and fast rule probably takes some of the joy away from it, but the sort of strong encouragement, please, will you consider, is this something you could join us in? Our local Cubs group did it very successfully. If you wanted your child to go to Cubs, you had to be the parent helper 1 in 8. Okay. That was it. And they just did. And it was just an obligation. I'm not sure I would really be up for serving in church being an obligation. I think it needs to be a heart thing.
Yeah. And we found parents who have gone, have kind of had to sign up to get it. And then they've actually found a real heart to grow. And they've actually got to know some of the other kids and actually gone, Making the connection themselves of actually this makes a difference for that family that you're saying about, that single mum who needs a break on a Sunday, and to come and just hear the good news and hear the preaching without having to serve is makes a difference, isn't it, to church?
So I think every context is different, but I do think it is a good idea to strongly recommend or strongly encourage or strongly invite people to consider where they can, because we can make church quite a consumer culture. You come and what do you get out of it? So no, what am I going to put in? And my family. So it goes back to the spiritual side of things, doesn't it? It's my family and my home.
Yeah, absolutely right. It's interesting because Emma's from a small town up in Lincolnshire, and their church, have a kids ministry. And some of Emma's friends, they serve every single week on kids ministry, and that's just a norm. So when they were told, it's a rule that you have to serve 1 in 4, they couldn't believe it. And I think you're right. When you come to a big church, there's different expectations, there's different way of doing it. So it's really important, isn't it, to keep installing those family kind of values, isn't it? Because in a small church, if you don't do it, then it's not going to happen. The kids are in the meeting and they're not getting blessed in the same way that they could be with a ministry. So it's important to remember, isn't it?
I'm just thinking about people who might be listening to this podcast. It's fine if you're able to influence the leadership team to have that conversation with them, but if you are the rota filler, as a church administrator, that would be more difficult than to maybe even have that conversation about because you probably wouldn't have the authority to say, you might not have the authority to say you have to serve 1 in 4. So I guess it's how do we help people to have the conversations? Well,
I think in our group, when we broke down on the UCAN event, I think there was 1 or 2 people in the group who they didn't have that relationship with their senior pastor. They weren't able to have those conversations. There was an expectation on them just to get it back to how it was pre-COVID. And there was you could see that they were going to struggle with that and find it quite difficult. So you do feel for people like that. And if you're a pastor listening today, and you're in a situation where you're working with somebody in a voluntary way or somebody in a part-time or full-time role who's serving you in this area of filling rotas, take an interest in it. Make sure that you're leading and supporting them in it, that you guys work together on it rather than just being left to do, this is a decision, go and implement it, but actually let's bring the two together. And that's so important. And we want administrators not to be burnt out in this season now all the way to Christmas, isn't it? And that's the danger, is they're going to be fried a bit.
Well, I mean, there's always the September to Christmas craziness. But I think it's much more focused this time because every ministry is trying to get back and every ministry is expecting and every ministry is demanding huge generalizations there. And it's a difficult question of should we actually really be starting that again?
And particularly for the person who's running it. It's absolutely right. One final thing then is, we chatted a bit about this Matthew 9:36 about the harvest and praying for more laborers and this idea of we need to pray and we need to trust God that he's going to provide what we need. So I guess if you're in a role, recruiting role, then don't panic about it. Do spend time praying, do spend time seeking God and asking him to help you in these areas to change people's hearts. What are you doing? How do we ensure that we get the right balance with our volunteers, that we're not begging them or manipulating them, or we kind of forget about them because they're the quiet ones and they just get on with it? What experience have you got, Penny, that you can share with us on those kind of areas? Just making sure that people aren't taken advantage of, that they're well supported, those kind of things.
Do that's a really interesting observation, isn't it? Because you tend to find somebody's a new Christian or new to church, they throw themselves in and they get involved in every team everywhere, and there has to be some kind of pastoral oversight or coordination of, do you know what, actually sometimes you just need to sit and be, because what will happen is you will burn out. Now some people are high capacity, some people can do that. But actually, is that at a cost to their family? Mm-hmm. So I think we need to pastorally look after our volunteers. Like you say, the quiet ones are the ones who perhaps go under the radar. And then you've got the ones who always want to be,
Yeah.
giving you a bit of grief. So it's wisdom and discernment, isn't it? We need to pray for wisdom and discernment. I think there were so many things going through my mind as you were even talking about that scripture. I have a senior leader who will often say to me, if God can create the world in 6 days, then he can do whatever he chooses to do whenever he chooses to do it. He can find you a team of volunteers like that if it's his will.
Yes.
So I guess it's God, am I doing your will? Am I asking the right question? Am I praying the right prayer?
Yeah.
Is this what you want? Do you want me to build this ministry? If the workers aren't coming forwards and I am really seeking God's will, perhaps you don't want it to happen. And I think that's probably something we maybe don't want to hear, because sometimes we have our own agenda, don't we, and our own desires. But I think definitely the sort of taking care of you. I remember you telling me about a minister or pastor who kept in touch with a certain number of people every week. I love that idea. One of the tasks I've given our volunteer coordinator is to go through the teams and regularly send them a thank you. But it has to be a personal thank you, not just a thank you for your serving, put it through the door, because I get those and think, oh, that wasn't really for me, was it? They just did a blanket load. So I think the knowing people, the inspiring you've talked about, making sure team leaders know it is their pastoral responsibility to look after their team. I think that there's lots of initiatives you could do. We have a team night every term or so where we pull all our teams together and just have a bit of fun, maybe have some food. I say we do that. We did it before lockdown. Maybe we need to reinstitute that, but just having fun together. You're the guys who make this stuff happen. So just lots of thank yous, lots of gratitude, lots of continual question of, are you sure this is what you want to do?
Is there anything else that we need? We can support you. It's funny, isn't it? Like I remember having a conversation with someone in the toddler crash the other day, and they were saying all the fancy dress stuff just goes everywhere. We've got this box of fancy dress, the kids love it, and it just goes everywhere. And wouldn't it our life would be so much easier if we had a rail, and this has been going on for 6 months. I was like, why has nobody just come and said, can we have a rail? Can you give us a rail? It'll make our life easier. So we've got them a rail, set it all up, and it's like a dream in there. The kids love it. The workers are now, that much. It's just easier to manage. And you think there are small things like that. So the communication is between volunteers, that actually a tiny little change or a tiny little bit of investment or resource can actually make that whole thing more enjoyable. The workers have got more life. They're not as stressed out. And that's what we want to create, isn't it, in these different teams? If you've got a dodgy kettle or something like that, you want to get it changed.
What can we do to make things easier for you? What can we do to make this a better experience? I think sometimes we, in the past maybe, have just said, oh, that you just go sort that out yourselves, whereas there just needs to be that engagement, doesn't there? We're interested in you and how you're doing this, so how can we help you do it better? And permit that dialogue, that actually, you know what, there might be somebody with a better idea than me on how to do it. Because it's not just, I know we talked about it before, not just giving the volunteers the lowest of the low tasks. There are some pretty gifted people out there who have skill sets from their secular workplace that actually could make this ministry different.
Absolutely right. No, I think you're spot on, isn't it? And a couple of other points that we were chatting about before was there was one lady in the group which I thought was a great idea. She was saying that often as a church administrator you can go to the same people. So I've got a catering event, I know I'm going to go to these people. I'm doing this particular street work or homeless project, I'm going to go to these people. And actually she was organizing, which I thought was a good idea, almost like a freshers fair feel, where actually everybody is scrapped off the whole rota. Now it's a bit risky, but I love that. I think it's quite great. Everyone's off the rota, you re-sign up. And they created a brochure with all the different job descriptions, all the role descriptions, who was going to be leading the different ministries. And I'm looking forward to kind of touching base there and saying, well, how did that all go? Because I think it's a good idea and something I'd love to try. But it does feel a bit risky. But I think for me, I've got to find tools as a church administrator that actually I've got my go-to people and I can pull off event really quickly, because I know I've got that structure that I've built over so many years. But actually there's people in the church who would probably love to, use our new paella dish that we've just bought and organize a big food event, and that I don't know about, or have got a real passion for something. So helpful thought.
Yeah, and just on that, I mean, it's back to scripture. Our job as leaders is to pull out the gifting that's inside somebody that they don't even know is there.
Yeah.
So unless we give those opportunities and we go outside our normal ask of people, it's like you were saying earlier, the person who went on to the children's ministry and realized, actually, I'm making a difference here.
Yeah.
I didn't know I was good at this.
Yeah.
I think just sort of we have to listen for the Holy Spirit's prompting of who to ask.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that is a really key thing here. It's when you put this into a spiritual context, if my role is to bring out and bring on people into the fullness of life that God's put into them,
that
actually becomes far more than filling a rota.
Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah, I remember recruiting a lady to do kind of like a head steward role, and she'd not done it before. She was nervous, and I thought, do you know what, let's give her a shot. What's the worst thing that could happen? Somebody doesn't find a seat, in the prompt time, or the communion doesn't get passed around and in the same time as we normally do, and things like that. Anyway, it turns out that this lady is absolutely brilliant. She's probably the best head steward we've got, and she's only been doing it for about a few months, and she is now developing the role in a way that I don't have time to do, that is serving the church in a better way. And I love that, when you kind of think, there's something there, I don't know exactly what it is, let's thrust her into some leadership position, and then she's just absolutely flourished. And I love seeing that. There's a happy place there, isn't there, of going, oh yeah, God's good, and we did a good job that day.
I don't think Jesus, I know Jesus trained his disciples, but I'm sure when he sent them out, he probably had a moment of, don't know if they can do this. Oh, well, let's give them a go. And I think sometimes we get so preoccupied with it has to be right, it has to be perfect. No, sometimes we have to just let people have a go.
Yeah. And
I love that story.
Yeah, this is a great way to end in a way, isn't it? Because, investing time into people is key for a church administrator and the operations director, is it? Knowing what people are doing, knowing their strengths, getting to know people, what kind of season that people are in at the minute. If I'm going to ask them to help in this area, this might not be the right time. So all those kind of sensitivities and the Spirit of God at work in us, we need, God to help us in these areas, so that we do get the right people, we ask the right questions, and we support people well. So yeah, that's useful, Penny. And I love the fact that you were teaching on it, and I think it is an area that we want to keep reminding ourselves and refreshing ourselves, and maybe I'll be doing some sort of crazy fair in January, throwing everything out.
Oh gosh, I remember one day we actually had a no team Sunday, and the leadership team served the rest of the church.
Yeah,
it wasn't disastrous, but it was certainly interesting. Have a go, let's see. I think God would be happy with that. God would be happy with that, wouldn't he? Likes to see his kids having fun.
Yeah, absolutely right. And I think there's a danger, one thing, we're both serving in big churches, so there's a danger to become very professional, isn't there? And it's one of the things that I often think in the back of my mind. We can drive a standard and push a standard forward, that actually cuts a load of people off from getting involved. So for big churches that might be listening to that, actually let's bring the standard down. Let's not. We're a family, and that message is key, isn't it? We're not a professional organization. And there's an expectations on big churches to be that, but let's fight against that, and keep the family focus right across all these different teams and different things that we've got going on.
Brilliant.
All right, well, we'll call it a day there, Penny. Your wisdom, and I'm sure we're looking forward to having you back again. And we're always on the phone chatting. I always ring you up and pester you, and I say, oh, I'm working on this, or how are you doing? And really thrilled that the relationship with UCAN and the church office is developing and just growing stronger and stronger, and just your friendship is great. So thank you for being on today, Penny.
Right back at you. Thanks, mate.
It's good. If you've got any questions about volunteering, I know UCAN have produced 2 documents of name managing volunteers well.
And recruiting volunteers well.
And so there's some help there available. If you're not part of UCAN, then check it out and become a member and get involved in that. I know there's a whole load of resources that you can get from their website and from their network, and the peer-to-peer support stuff is just fantastic. The church office website has some volunteer packs and code of conducts and job descriptions and stuff. Again, you can use it for free. Check out those documents, download them, and just implement them in your churches if they serve you. So from us at the church office, it's goodbye, and we'll see you again soon.